Days are finished, demon!
Ich noch demon her!
It speaks.
It speaks!
I am Ripper, Tearer, Slasher, Gouger. I am the teeth in the darkness, the talons in the night. Mine is strength and lust and power. I am power!
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Brick Pit. I'm your host today, Jason, and joining me is the story that parents tell their children to warn them off the dangers of wearing a tie every day to school, Adam.
That is a true statement in more ways than you know.
Oh, we know.
And also with us is the eternal hero who saved his family money by not booking a hotel room and having them sleep in their van for their Disney World vacation, Josh.
Adam and I are like polar opposites of the hero template. He's wearing the tie every day to school, and I had the leather jacket and smoked cigarettes.
Leatherette jacket.
Leatherette.
I had my embroidered pink ladies jacket that I made my mom make me.
Leather. It's better than the old Marlboro jacket you got by only turning in so many coupons and then.
Look, man, it only cost me a quarter of a lung.
That's right. But you can't wear tobacco memorabilia to school, so they got to cut off that patch on the front.
You know what's funny is when I was in Italy decades ago now, back during the Mussolini period. And no, but like the Marlboro jacket that you would associate with like Talladega or that kind of crowd was very popular among a lot of people in Italy. I saw no less than like 6 or 7 full-on like jackets that were a facsimile of the red Marlboro box. Full leather.
That would be full leather in Italy, right? They got it's. It's
I think it's law.
I
think it's by law. Yeah, yeah, and they'd be wearing like $200 slacks and $500 shoes and a Marlboro jacket. That's Italy. So for our 3 listeners in Italy, I see you.
In the 80s.
Well, that Marlboro jacket probably cost $1,000.
That's right.
Versace Marlboro.
So today's episode is not about smoking or Marlboro. It is instead about myths, legends, and folklore being translated to the silver screen. For centuries, mankind has had the need to tell stories for one reason or another. And a lot of it is to inspire and to make sense of the world around them. And so a lot of these stories that were originally passed down verbally and then were written are now being translated yet again in moving images. So some of the probably most famous and reused a lot, of course, the King Arthur legend, Camelot and all that, and Beowulf, which is probably like one of the best things I ever read in junior high and high school.
Did you read it in the Old English like a true pro?
Nah. But you also have, of course, the ancient myths, legends. Hercules, been retold again, Jason the Argonauts. Probably the most famous examples of those are a lot of the sword and sandals. We discussed that very briefly in our sword and sorcery episode last year. But there's also just, taking old, like, legends of monsters, like the boogeyman, stuff like that, and translating them. And, of course, the American tall tale. That's mostly been done in animation. But these are stories that kind of stick with us and kind of inform us as societies.
So one of the things you mentioned at the up front of that was talking about the oral tradition of these histories, these oral histories of creation myths and other types of myths. And one of the really good examples, this didn't make the list for my movies, but one of the things I will really, really enjoy is in the movie Noah with Russell Crowe.
The Darren Aronofsky Noah, correct?
Maybe.
Yes.
I wasn't that prepared for this because I just got off the fly here, but there's a scene where he's telling the story of creation to his children as an oral tradition. And he starts by saying something to the effect of, I'll tell you as my father told me and his father told him before. And he basically recites the first several parts of Genesis, right? And they do a really good animation sequence of sort of the creation of the earth based on the Judeo-Christian model. And that storytelling method, the way he did it and the way they visually show that, it's one of my, I really enjoy that as a representation of oral tradition. So
what I find fascinating about the whole myths and legend thing, and like you said, there's the American tall tale and stuff, but that it can become hyper localized.
Oh yeah.
So I was thinking about today, and it seems to me that like ghost stories almost seem to be like, I wouldn't say urban, but more populated, because like a lot of like myths and legends, as far as like kind of the cryptid origin or whatever, are all wilderness based. And so there's almost like a dichotomy there. Because I was thinking the whole time, like up in around Natchez, Mississippi, they have the Chattawa monster, which turned out to be like a monkey that escaped a circus, but became a legend. And then down in Louisiana, you got the Rougarou, and you've got the Honey Island Swamp Monster, which is basically a werewolf. But there's like these kind of like regional flavors. Like every place has those myths and legends.
Haunted Bridge. There's a Bunny Man thing, and
Bunny Man,
or the witch that'll get you. Who if you're out past curfew or something.
Bell Witch, Jersey Devil.
Yeah.
Yep. Mississippi has the Yazoo Witch.
Oh,
yeah, which is a very, very popular story. And, based slightly in reality, based on a woman who was actually thought to be a witch.
All those regional stories have some grain of some person or thing existed or allegedly existed. Like in Appalachia and the North Carolina border area, there's the Goat Man who has two stories, right? So the benign version, he was a real guy in the 30s and 20s and 40s who had
he just raised goats.
No, he had a cart on wheels drawn by a team of goats, and he would go all up and down the east coast the east border of Tennessee and North Carolina in this goat drawn thing. The benign story is he would carve things out of wood and sell them to make money and go to town and buy stuff. And I think
that's Odin, but go ahead.
And then the less benign story is, of course, he was kidnapped children and, riding off into the woods with his goat drawn, cart or whatever. But he was a real dude. Like if you Google him, there's actual photos of this guy in the 30s, in like Mayberry type town.
And it's like John Henry.
Yeah.
There's actual evidence that a man existed
who met that description.
Description and kind of falls into all those story elements that come through.
Johnny Appleseed was like an actual dude. He wanted people to make apple cider, though. He was
bit of a lush.
He was a bootlegger, like a long-term thinking bootlegger. Well, I took to X and asked our followers, our legion of fans, the Pittians, the Pittants, if they had any, regional or local. And we got a couple of responses. Actually, Joseph the Dad, who some of you may know, he said up in Boggy, Mississippi, where he comes from, they had Bloody Bones and Greedy Guts, which turned out to be a derivative of Bloody Bones and Rawhead, which I think appears in the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It comes from Celtic mythology, which I have told you that story about Rawhead and Bloody Bones.
Yeah.
that my grandmother and great-grandmother used to scare my brother and I from going on the second floor of the old building they lived in.
Yes, I think it was in college was the first time I ever heard of those, and it was like everybody had a variation sitting around, and I was like, no, man, I'd never heard it. Now I'm scared. And I remember I had to get walked home by everybody. It was embarrassing.
He lived next door too. That was the real embarrassing part.
And it was always the prettiest girl that walked you home. And
in the mythological version, yes.
and that's how you met my mother.
The Film Utopia podcast brought up that they like the film Troll Hunter, which I don't think we'll talk about, but we'll kind of talk about Scandinavian stuff.
That's a good movie too, yeah.
Yeah, and how it's pretty steeped in that Scandinavian. Like those dudes know how to weave a a scary myth. Like, don't turn that corner because that's where Corner Man is. He hates people taking corners, and he'll flay your flesh.
Are you sure that wasn't Adam Sandler?
That's his new Netflix movie coming out. Yeah.
Well, we know somebody who will watch it twice.
I'm the Corner Man. I'm gonna flay your flesh.
We got any more?
No, that's it. We only have 2 people that listen to us on the act. So
I've seen the numbers. That tracks.
but that's audience participation. So at least those 2 people, if they care to listen, will know that that we care.
Also, it's possible they don't listen, but they do follow Twitter, which is.
It's also possible that those are my alt accounts too. I mean, when I say possible, I mean probable.
That makes much more sense now. Yeah.
I will have to say, and this is going to date me, and we're all going to feel old when I say this, but remember encyclopedias?
Yeah.
You actually had just an entire shelf with reference material in your own home.
Usually a decade plus out of date, but
yes.
Yeah, because you had to buy them like on spec or like on like a payment plan.
Yeah.
You get like 1 letter a month for a couple years. You know?
So we had the World Book Encyclopedia. I'll give my mother credit. She made sure that we had reading material and educational reading material and everything in our homes. Some of the supplemental books they had, of course, on different topics and everything. Like one was mathematics, and I think that had like the Phantom Toll Booth in it. But the last, the last book in that series, though, was my absolute favorite, and it was a book of myths and legends from around the world. And of course, they're extremely truncated versions.
Right, right.
But, they were kind of some of my first introductions to some of the things we'll talk about, like the Green Knight and Perseus, and even, some Native American and African folklore and legends and stuff like that. And I was always drawn to those. They always kind of fascinated me. I'm hoping that you guys also maybe have a slight fascination as well, so I'm not just here on my own. But
yeah, no, I was always terrified of the Time Life book commercials.
Yes.
Like they'd be like, a twin separated at birth could feel each other's pain. They'd be like, read the book. I'm like, I don't want to read that. That sounds terrifying.
So I actually took a class in college that was like essentially basically what you just described from that is a truncated version of myths and legends around the world. It focused a lot on East Asian myths, of which I remember very little, frankly, but I still have all we had to buy these shortened versions of each of these stories.
Written by the professor.
Yeah.
At exorbitant prices.
Now that you say that, maybe. But because they were East Asian, a lot of them were like translations that weren't, they were okay, but they're not like riveting. They take out a lot of the flair. It was a fun class. It was a hard class though, because they were all myths and legends that I had no basis of familiarity with. It's weird because the stories don't take the twists that you expect culturally for me, because it was like a companion class to Western philosophy. So it was like the other side of the coin was all these myths and legends from Eastern religions and cultures and things. And
well, it's interesting. I know that we're kind of, I typically lean into the more like cryptid and like horror, scary folklore stuff, but like they're different than like fables because
right.
A lot of times there is no moral other than the world is a cruel and horrible place and that you should be terrified of the unknown.
Weird. Yeah, with the cryptid stuff. But a lot of the myths and legends are sometimes they're just like the lesson is sometimes weird things happen. Or individuals can be strange and do unusual things that are worth singing songs about or telling stories about. Like that is different than a fable, because a fable has ostensibly some kind of lesson engaged.
Right. Well, and I mean, there is like the Greek myths and stuff. There's lots of like creation myths and in an attempt to explain the natural world by anthropomorphizing the
almost got it.
natural.
We'll give you 8 out of 10 on that.
I mean, that was a good Mississippi pronunciation. That was a Mississippi A.
That was a Mississippi A. Judges rule, it's fine.
Yeah, like in the South, I don't know if the Angels are bowling when it was thundering, or The devil was beating his wife.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
That's a great one.
By the way, that is a very good. If somebody claims, "quote," "Oh, I know a lot about Southern culture," just throw that out there. Either they know or they don't. That's
Well, I think that's fairly regionalized. Like you can take one of those online tests that can tell
where you're at.
That can accurately predict where you are by, like, if you say pop or bubbler or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And the devil beating his wife is fairly localized. It's not. I don't think that's a universal Southern.
Hills and valleys.
No, I think, as you mentioned before, Adam, it's very interesting to see the structure of stories from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
Like I think like Baba Yaga is a very interesting one.
Yeah.
The witch from Russian folklore and everything. Because in some stories she's the villain, and in other stories she helps the hero, but usually at a cost or something. Like it's
right. It's almost Faustian.
Yeah.
Because of the, to compare it to a Western.
Is that the
parallel.
house with the chicken legs?
Yes.
I know that from like King's Quest 3. all of my knowledge either comes from episodes of Star Trek where I learned Shakespeare, and mythology comes from the King's Quest series on computer. So
I'm sure each of you had a similar experience where probably like 4th, 5th, 6th grade, you read what is objectively a absolutely terrible book, but at the time you thought this was the best thing. This is the best piece of literature ever written for mankind.
Ayn Rand. My God, what was I thinking?
Jason was listening to Rush and reading Ayn Rand in 4th grade.
In the
Had a little
South.
ponytail.
That tracks. Mine was a book called On the Devil's Court, and it was
about pickleball, right?
It was about basketball. This kid, I forget what grade he's in, wants to be a basketball superstar in his school. And so it is Faust. It's Marlowe's Faust. The devil comes. He makes a bargain with this kid for his soul to whatever. Very heavy, but the book's like 110 pages. It's definitely for like upper elementary school grades or whatever. Because of where I grew up and when I grew up, it was like this thing was super sacrilegious to even be reading it, and it felt kind of dangerous, And I of course had no like concept this was a total ripoff of Better Things. And I was like, and then when I got to college, I read Faust, and I was like, dadgummit.
So if you want to know the Southern version of Faust, you just listen to Charlie Daniels' band, Devil Went Down to Georgia. Because no good old boy is ever going to admit the devil can get the best of them.
That's right.
I actually saw the Faust opera when I was in 7th grade because I was in the smart kids class. They had to truck us all the way to New Orleans to get some culture.
I want to talk about a contradiction. New Orleans and Faustian culture. It's like,
oh yeah. Well, yeah. I also learned that's where I got them shoes.
I'll go watch Faust, and then I'm going to go down to the quarter and watch a woman show us her boobs for plastic beads.
Were you there? I don't remember you being on that trip.
I've been to New Orleans, period. So.
Well, the New Orleans Opera was very well. It was very good production in 1990 something. The past century. God, old dudes on a podcast, man. Like,
are there any other kind?
Well, there's only old people listening, probably, or people in their like 30s that are like, "Ooh, at least I'm not in my 40s."
Encyclopedias for books.
Knocking on heaven's door over there. Brick pit.
No, I think there's a kind of an internal mechanism, I believe, within our brains. If you've ever read Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces, he talks a lot about the monomyth, but also like kind of our need, like the human need for ritual and for these tales and everything. So if you ever get a chance, you should definitely read it.
Well, and the Greeks even like distilled down that they're only a certain set of stories. In the more modern times, it's boy meets girl, boy loses girl. They kind of put that spin on it. But there's only a set number of templates of stories that people find interesting. Because typically when people go outside of that, it fails miserably because we like hearing the same thing over and over again with different dressing.
All right. So, speaking of hearing the same story over and over again, Adam, what is your first pick?
Well, first, before that, you made
to the wall.
Did either of you, when it was a thing, watch The Power of Myth on PBS?
Yeah, it had George Lucas on it. That's where I got introduced to Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
When you said that just a second ago, I was like, oh, that brought back some kind of deep memory that I'd forgotten about. So anyway, I wonder if you could still find that somewhere. If you can, it'd be worth watching because that was an interesting little series on there. But anyway,
what is interesting about that? This is aside, but Lucas talked about wanting to create the new American myth, and with Star Wars, and I think 30 years later we can look back and say, well, yeah, he kind of did.
I also like the fact that the producers that worked with him says, yeah, that Joseph Campbell stuff didn't come out until after Star Wars was successful. So that might be another bit of a Lucas Star Wars history revision going on.
Anywho, my first, or my only, I guess, for this episode anyway, my film is the Disney telling of the Hercules story.
Our story begins eons ago.
Hit it, ladies!
And when the world was new,
The end is coming!
the planet Earth was down on its luck.
Oh, we're in trouble!
And everywhere gigantic brutes called Titans ran amok.
What you folks need is a hero.
Yeah. And who are you?
I happen to be a hero.
Disney Pictures presents
Who was the gladiator?
Why does that name ring a bell?
I don't know. Maybe we owe him money?
He's the strongest man on Earth.
Aren't you a damsel in distress?
I can handle this. Have a nice day.
He's the nicest guy in town.
Don't let your guard down because of a pair of big goo-goo eyes!
But he's having a devil of a time.
Name is Hades, Lord of the Dead. Hi, how you doing?
We are worms!
Memo to me, maim you after my meeting.
Trying to prove himself.
Is this kid gonna mess up my hostile takeover bid or what?
The hero is only as good as his weapon.
Use your head!
Let's get ready to rumble! My favorite part of the game. Sudden death.
Come on! Take off on an epic new adventure.
I'm right behind you, kid! I'm way behind you, kid!
Featuring a monster cast.
Destroy!
Guys, Olympus would be that way.
A hotshot villain.
I've got 24 hours to get rid of this bozo. And you are wearing his merchandise!
And one true hero. From the creators of Aladdin and The Little Mermaid.
Didn't know you had a famous father, did you?
Comes the man.
Hercules!
Hercules.
The myth.
I'm an action figure.
The movie.
And hey, 2 thumbs way up.
Hercules.
We dance, we kiss, we schmooze, we carry on, we go home happy. What do you say? Come on.
I wanted to do something a little more gravity to it, but I just didn't have time to really put the energy and focus into it. And so I went with low-hanging fruit. But this isn't actually a really good movie.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I love the fact that they didn't go with the typical Disney art style and actually incorporated ancient Greek art.
Well, yeah, and they had a Greek chorus and stuff. It was the interesting thing about a lot of those like movies at that time is kind of during a time where Disney was not. It was on the decline, but a lot of those films, like what's the one with that has Patrick Warburton as the one of the heavies,
Emperor's New Groove.
Emperor's New Groove,
New Groove, yeah.
like hold up a lot better than some of those Disney Renaissance era stuff. So anyway, my point is, I think that this is an underrated film. It's really
well.
good.
You actually hit on something there because it's so 97. When it was Toy Story came out in 96. So this is when they were shifting the animation division over and experimenting with Pixar more. And that was, I think, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was when they were really pushing that partnership with Pixar. I think the animation studios saw that was going to be the way of the future. And so they just kind of cut loose the traditional animation side of the house and there was less like bureaucracy and oversight, and those guys just made some awesome, like you said.
If you look at the stories of them making The Emperor's New Groove, like the guy who has credit for writing the script, he says, we didn't have a complete script until a week after the movie was released.
That's funny.
They were literally changing it on the fly constantly.
Yeah.
And James Woods is great in this film as
is Danny DeVito for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, James Woods, Hades, yes, and he talks about how he got it like everybody else is coming in essentially doing the deep, gruff, Clancy Brown, Ron Perlman voice, and he's doing it just kind of like a shady Hollywood agent.
I've read a description of him that was like your uncle that comes to Thanksgiving that you don't like. That's the way I always think of it when I watch it. But
looks like your game's over. Wonder Boy's hitting every curve you throw at him.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if maybe I haven't been throwing the right curves at him, Meg, my sweet.
Don't even go there.
See, he's got to have a weakness because everybody's got a weakness. I mean, for what? Pandora, it was the box thing. For the Trojans, hey, they bet on the wrong horse, okay? We simply need to find out Wonder Boys.
I've done my part. Get your little imps.
They couldn't handle him as a baby. I need somebody who can handle him as a man.
Hey, I've sworn off manhandling.
Well, that's good because that's what got you into this jam in the first place, isn't it? You sold your soul to me to save your boyfriend's life. And how does this creep thank you? By running off with some babe. He hurt you real bad, didn't he, Meg, huh?
Look, I learned my lesson, okay?
Which is exactly why I got a feeling you're gonna leap at my new offer. You give me the key to bringing down Wonder Breath, and I give you the thing that you crave most in the entire cosmos. Your freedom.
I've had the benefit, with having kids, having seen this more recently, and there's a lot of mid-quality level Disney stuff in their long history of movie making now, all right? And if you watch a lot of Disney, you got Disney Plus, you're watching a lot of Disney.
100 years.
Yeah, there's a lot that you can just be like, yeah, I'm just going to ignore this while it's on. I want to go TikTok or read a book or something. But there's a handful of good movies, and this is one of them where when the kids are like, let's watch this, I'll sit down and I'll also watch, So.
This and The Cat from Outer Space are the only two that Adam will stop and sit down and watch.
That's right.
Dude, don't even diss on The Cat from Outer Space. That was my jam. I was going to say, for us, it's this and the Hellraiser series. If any of the Hellraisers on, we sit down as a family.
That tracks. For those who aren't in the know, it is a loose interpretation of the story of Hercules from traditional Greek mythology, which they skirt around all the gods sleeping with other gods and the familial relationships. They kind of
Disneyfied.
It's Disneyfied, and a lot of the torture, turmoil, and pain and suffering isn't as over the or overtly presented either. But it's a movie that has a lot of like good jokes that land. It's written as a comedy, obviously, for kids. But the stakes seem like legit and the characters are believable. And it's what I would just consider just good classic Disney storytelling because they take existing mythological narrative, Disneyfy it, as you say, but they didn't screw it up. I guess, when kind of speaking through this in real time right now, as I'm thinking of it, a lot of Disney is that, right? Cinderella is not necessarily a myth, but it was a tale, a legend, That
was their whole bag, man.
Well, they claim that the Lion King is the first original Disney.
But it was that Japanese
wink,
story.
wink, nudge,
right.
nudge.
But we all know,
Yeah.
Well, it's also Hamlet. Like, I mean, just unequivocally. Yeah, but I think like it's like Simba the White Lion or something.
Yes.
Like, you couldn't even change the name, dude.
I remember seeing the trailers for the Lion King, and I heard Simba, and I was thinking Kimba, which is the manga and the anime, and it's like he's not white. He's supposed to be a white lion. That's the whole thing.
That reminds me of a story I heard just this week about a professor. He was gathering proposals for a paper, he was using this as an illustrate, these damn Gen Y or whatever. I don't know what the current generation we're supposed to hate is, but just hate them all and you're okay. But so some guy gives his proposal, and the next guy's like, my proposal is that with a twist. That's all he said. That's pretty much what the Lion King was. It's like, we're going to take this. Well, he's not white. Totally different.
But yeah, I think this is a very Disney, kid-friendly version of the Hercules tale. Yeah, like you said, it's fun. It's fun to watch with your family and everything. And I think it gives a bit, actually, of the kind of the Hercules character a little bit of the bravado and everything that kind of comes out in some of the old tales.
In the writing for this, what the two head writers for this, Clements and Musker, had said was that they were modeling the story off of screwball comedies from like the 40s and 50s. And what they were looking for was like a Frank Capra with Hercules as a young Jimmy Stewart and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And Meg was Barbara Stanwyck from like Lady Eve or Meet John Doe. What's funny to me about all that is that those kind of tropes or that similarity would be completely lost on a kid in 97. But a parent in 1997 taking their kid would be not so far removed from those movies and those tropes to get the similarities, like the jokes would land for them too. I'm curious if it, like I get them now, but I'm like a film buff, right? I'm curious if like a Gen Z new parent in their early 20s has a kid and they watch this, if those 40s and 50s screwball jokes land. I don't know if they would or not, but
I don't know if they would have had that much of a reference even back in the 90s, because I would really have to say, like with TCM, it really kind of helped bring those old movies more into the forefront. And so that was around 96 or no, 94. I think they're celebrating 30 years. So I don't know if it was quite as prevalent.
Okay. Yeah, not a lot of people were watching the Philadelphia Story in the 90s.
Yeah.
Or Shop Around the Corner.
But I think the structure of those stories still feel familiar and have been kind of copied over and over. So they might not get the direct reference.
Oh, that's true. They might get the
through the weird cultural telephone that we
that's true
push through films.
Our own oral history of a sort.
Right. Well, it's like there's this great line in Waiting for Guffman where Eugene Levy says, I was never the class clown, but I studied him. And it's like that's how I kind of feel about, like, it's like I understand this reference. I never saw the real thing, but I know, people are like, I saw that on Family Guy and it was referencing something.
Well, we've had that because all throughout our childhoods, movies and TV and everything have referenced badges. We don't need no stinking badges.
And it's from UHF. I didn't know that.
Yeah, but the treasure of the Sierra Madre. It's but it was one of those things that got so popular and so ingrained in the culture at the time that it just stuck and stayed through.
It has its own like momentum beyond the original source material. Yeah. So anyway, that's my pitch. Now, if you're stuck with a kid and you have to watch a movie, pick this one.
You're randomly stuck with a kid.
Yes.
And you have access to Disney Plus or a Blu-ray player and the DVD.
And you're waiting for his parents to call you back on the ransom.
That's right. This will make the
ransom of Red Chief 2. If you're locked in the Disney vault.
You'll be in there for several years before they open it again.
There's been all the time in the world.
There's been a nuclear war, but they've left the DVD player outside the vault.
That's Fallout. That's Fallout Season 2 is going to be like a vault of people that were like stuck in the Disney vault.
The guy comes out and his glasses break, but there was time now. So I want to kind of pivot off that and actually go with one of my choices because it's also a sword and sandals inspired by Greek myth. That's the 1981 Ray Harryhausen classic Clash of the Titans.
Provide him with suitable weapons of divine temper, a helmet, a shield, a sword,
Find and fulfill your destiny.
The myth, the magic, the mystery, the majesty.
Destroy Argos! Let loose the last of the Titans.
Metro Goldwyn Mayer presents Clash of the Titans. The good, the evil, the danger, the daring.
How may a mortal man face and defeat the Kraken?
Clash of the Titans. The combat, the courage, the splendor, the spectacle. Clash of the Titans. Starring Harry Hamlin as Perseus, Judy Bowker as Andromeda, Burgess Meredith, Maggie Smith, Ursula Andress, Claire Bloom, Sean Phillips, Flora Robeson, and Laurence Olivier as Zeus. Before history, beyond imagination. Clash of the Titans.
Now, this was a movie that is loosely based on the Perseus myth. This is how I thought the myth was until I actually read it like years later. I was like, oh.
Burgess Meredith isn't anywhere in this.
He's nowhere in he should be. But like, you know, because he like rides Pegasus and it's like, huh, Pegasus is actually born in this myth. from Medusa. Okay, so. But it's great. The stop motion animation I love. It's a little outdated now, but
it's still really representative of its time. It was really cool.
Yeah, and I still think compared to the current Marvel and DC CGI, looks better.
Not far.
This was another constant that was on the Beastmaster channel, TBS. I never saw the uncut version until
neither did I.
until I was in school.
I don't think
They decided to show it like in I think we were in junior high. It was one of those days, you know, the teacher was drunk and just put on a video, you know, like they did. and there's some adult situations in that.
Right out the gate in the opening credits.
I was pleased.
I was glad it was another hour and a half left in the movie before I had to get up from my desk.
But I'm good. I was just going to sit for a while.
But yeah, like I said, this is the classic tale of Perseus as told with... but it's got like a huge cast. Like Laurence Olivier, I think, is Zeus.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the witches from Harry Potter is also on there.
Isn't Helen Mirren in it, or am I thinking of? Anyway, there's anybody who is anybody or will be somebody is in this film. It's pretty much like in the 80s, if you were going to end up playing Dungeons and Dragons, like this was ground zero.
Right.
This is why you wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons, because you're like, oh, I want to use the shield to show Medusa her reflection or whatever, you know.
Okay, yeah. Harry Hamlin as Perseus, Maggie Smith, as Andromeda's mother, I believe. Or no.
I thought she was one of the gods, wasn't she?
Yeah. She was one of the stand around gods. That's what it was. And Ursula Andress, a Bond girl as Aphrodite. It is one of those movies that it's an experience to watch. Like it is really captivating when you're a child. One of the kind of, I don't want to say Disney-fication aspects of it, but yeah, probably more inspired by Star Wars at the time is they take Athena's owl, Bubo, and essentially turn him into a robot.
He was clockwork.
Are the gods an owl? Golden owl. Too heavy for the dead branch, eh?
How do you know that?
He told me.
Told you? Oh.
His name is Bubo.
Do you understand all those clicks and wheezes?
Perfectly clear to me.
It's another gift from the gods, like the sword in a helmet.
He can lead us to the shrine.
Vulcan made him, if I believe. They flew him to the planet Vulcan, and Spock's dad. The owl was another secret sibling of Spock.
One of many.
Spock's the Genghis Khan of Star Trek. He's related to 1 in 10 people are related to him.
It's like D&D. You have a random encounter chance of meeting with a Spock sibling.
Like your character dies, and immediately, like his cousin shows up to avenge his death, and he looks exactly like him. How many cousins you got?
As many as the plot requires.
But this is also the film where we get the very awesome quote of "Release the Kraken," which, of course, is not a Greek mythological creature.
No, but that fully its own thing now.
Yes. And it was a pretty awesome design, too. Like, it scared 3-year-old me.
I had a friend that had a toy of that thing, and it was like
huge,
maybe 2 foot tall.
I've seen one on.
I don't think he had any other figure. Like, so it was like G.I. Joe had to fight the Kraken, which was Hollywood. If you're listening, like
somebody call the mayor of Hollywood. Here we go.
That's pretty dope. Storm Shadow versus the Kraken. You know what I'm talking about.
He could have easily had a Masters of the Universe or a Transformer fight it.
They were too big, man. They like
King Kong.
Or he could have had little Kenner, like little tiny, like masked ones that are about the same size as the Star Wars figures.
Instead of remaking Clash of the Titans, they should have made Mask versus Clash of the Titans.
Mask versus the Kraken.
Calabas was like had like a 4-wheeler or something.
Yeah, like I said, this is a very, to me, and again, like I saw this when I was 3, and so I was just captivated by it. It's one of those things that's kind of, it could be the worst movie ever, and I'll watch it today and I'll still love every aspect of it. Like, you know, when we were kids, my brother had an Empire Strike Back lunchbox, and I had the Clash of the Titans lunchbox.
Well, and script-wise, it does a good job of like using Perseus to like weave through a bunch of
small
tales.
Vignettes.
Yeah. It's like a road trip or like a guided tour through, because there's a lot of people's first encounter with like Greek mythology, you know, and it kind of, I guess
that's true, isn't it? Because it
kind of gets a lot. Like you go right from there, from like what's the mythology book everybody has to read? It's just like mythology.
Edith Hamilton's mythology.
Yes,
yeah.
Like you watch Clash of the Titans,
and then go read it.
And the next thing you know, the book's in your hand, and you're reading it.
I've got a dog-eared copy on my shelf behind me.
Right, like it's a pipeline.
I also love like how they set up like how the gods intervene, and it's just like the people are just like these little figures on the shelf, and they'll pick them up and move them around.
Oh yeah.
So that's how Perseus is removed from the island that he grew up on and is put outside the city where he meets Andromeda. He just wakes up in the theater.
A memory of this at 3. I can't remember anything before this morning. Like I can't. That's incredible to me that you have memories from when you were 3.
I remember being in the womb.
I don't have like very explicit memory. I remember overall things. He gets like the gifts from Zeus, you know, and it's, you know, the sword, the helmet that turns him invisible, and the shield and all that. And as he progresses through, like going against all these villains and everything, he loses these things one by one, and so he becomes a little bit more vulnerable as the story goes on. And that's a very interesting aspect to me as well.
And again, like basically laying the framework for how thousands of nerds would play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Get the magic item. Everybody, like, I'm secretly a demigod. It's like, no, you're not. You're first level bard, man. You suck.
It pulls together all these different tales. You have the Stygian witches that all share the eye,
who were terrifying.
Yes, that was creepy.
And also, that's in Hercules too, if you remember. They have
Well, what was great about it is that Perseus he's very MacGyver. He's clever more than it's not. He doesn't just browbeat his way through things. So that, like, every challenge is something that he has to think outside the box. Even like solving the riddle. And again, like, our players would do the exact same thing in our current D&D campaign. It's like, well, we'll cheat and listen to turn invisible and listen to what the riddle is going to be, and then we'll answer it. And the GM goes, So, but it wasn't just like, even defeating the Kraken was not a brute force thing. Yeah. It was very much using tools at hand and using your mind. Spoiler, he uses freaking Medusa's head to turn the Kraken to stone. That's so awesome. Like,
that really is. Like, that is such...
It's such a great payoff.
It's such a fantastic scene. Like, I think we all remember watching that just in fascination, and just the stop motion animation of this Kraken turning to stone and then crumbling.
It's an embedded memory for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It just consumed you. When he unleashes it and holds up the head and the snakes start moving, the eyes turn red. That's like, to me, the magic of film. That's the dragon a lot of us chase, is to get that feeling again. And it's like, when you're a kid, you get a lot more. As an adult, you're lucky, like, you get an end game or something, and you're like, oh man.
Yeah, and I would even say, like, fighting the Medusa, there's so much awesome stuff. Like the fact that he gave Medusa like a snake body and that rattle, like that rattling sound just coming out of nowhere as she's moving. Man, that's a freaky sound. Like, that is frightening, and all the people turned to stone around him, crying out in agony as they turned. And again, he has to use his intelligence to defeat.
And Burgess Meredith basically, like, teaching him theater craft. Like, say, like, hey man, you got to put a little panache in this stuff if you want to.
He's basically teaching him how to GM.
He was like Eddie Guerrero, man. He was like, cheat to win, baby.
I'm still trying to figure out if we're picking up or losing listeners with all these D&D references and now wrestling.
I think we have hit a stasis or whatever, like a.
we found our people.
We're in a steady state.
That's right.
Anything that we say,
equilibrium is
say yes. It's like looking into a mirror, only different. That's from my musical stage play of Face Off.
I know it's funny you're saying that, because the newest evolution of old guys with podcasts is old guys with podcasts trying to sell their, like, next thing, which is like their memoir or their stage play, or so it would be totally.
If you go to Amazon, you can find my self-published book.
6 Tears and Why I Cry Them.
That dovetails very nicely into my theory of men are born with 3 tears that they can cry.
like a monkey's paw, like the finger.
and the only way you can earn more is by taking them from another man.
That is also in his new book that he's selling.
Yes,
on his Amazon self-publishing page.
The 6 Tears of Man.
I'll fight you for your tears. I only got one left. Can't lose it. What if my Meemaw dies this year?
Well, I already killed her.
Oh my god.
And now it's gone. You can't take it from me.
Becky Maggie Smith broke my heart, took all my tears years ago.
Basically, we just gave the synopsis of a 3-part play.
It's an opera that's going to be performed in New Orleans.
I love this movie. I think it's a great introduction to Greek mythology for younger people. Get the TV edit.
Yeah. Don't show this one at Thanksgiving. It's Hey kids, gather around. I want to show you some trauma.
Don't show it to the church group with the bare-boobed woman walking down the beach. I mean, I like that scene for the artistic reason. So
watch it after an episode of The Chosen. Be like, all right, now.
All right, Josh, why don't we get to your movie?
I want to talk about a recent film, and when I say recent, it's like 7 years old now. That's 2017's The Ritual.
Rob would have loved this place. He's a good man. The best of us.
You know, they have walking trails in England. Pubs.
Come on, man. Where's your soul?
It's twisted. It's twisted.
All right, yep. Easy. Look, we go southwest through here. We cut the journey in half.
What, through the forest?
Yeah, why not?
I should have gone to Vegas.
Oh, you'd have found something to fall over in Vegas too, mate. Now, is it me, or is it really quiet in here?
It's been gutted. Could be hunters out here.
Bait.
Possibly. Or it's the bit they don't show you in the nature documentary. It's a warning.
We shouldn't be here. Where the hell are we, Hutch?
We should pitch the tents.
This is ridiculous, man.
Luke, you're getting soaked.
You hear that?
No, I didn't hear anything. Come on.
So we're going to talk about it then or not?
It was a nightmare, Phil.
Well, what happened to you then?
We got spooked and we had bad dreams. All right?
I woke up last night. Look at this. Nothing has done that to you. You've done it to yourself. Why do you have to deny everything I say? Because I do not value your judgment.
We need to be working together, man.
That's recent for us.
Yes, I mean, that might as well be like in theaters now.
This is made in the last decade? Whoa.
Oh, pump your brakes, man. Not everybody's got all this time to watch these new movies. So, The Ritual is directed by David Bruckner, based on a novel, I believe, of the same name. It's one of those films that is, I would say, more about atmosphere because, like, it reminded me a lot of The Witch. Like, you know where the train tracks are going, but you're going to watch the scenery. You know, like the conclusion is inevitable. So the story is there's a couple of dudes. There's like 4 or 5 guys that are buds, and they're not like chuds or anything. They're not chads. They're not dweebs. They're just very average guys, and they're talking about taking a vacation together. And one dude really wants to go hiking in Norway or Sweden or something. Anyway, they go to buy some more booze. The place is robbed, and he gets killed. So, cut to 6 months later, the surviving guys go on the trip that he wanted to go on, kind of like to honor him and deal with the grief. So there's a lot of interplay between the characters. There's a lot of like survivor's guilt because the one guy that was with him cowered and didn't do anything to save him. And so, and there's a lot of anger pent up. So all this stuff is going to kind of come out. They're tromping around the woods. Well, they decided to take a shortcut through the forest because they'll get there faster. They didn't read Lord of the Rings where, they said shortcuts make for long ways. And they start finding like these weird symbols everywhere in the forest. And I think they find like a straight up torso. And they're like, oh, we're in trouble. So they're trying to get through there. They find this house. One of the guys wakes up and he's got these weird wounds all over him. And they keep kind of like feeling this presence and there's something there. And they run into these people that essentially capture them. And the long story short is that there's this, I think it's called like the Jutun is what the myth is. And it's this great visual of it's like this crazy deer looking god with all these antlers and kind of half human body. And so the guy that's marked is marked for death because these people have to sacrifice people to this ancient woodland god to be granted immortality. It goes from very atmospheric and very grounded to, okay, we're around these crazy people and they're a cult, to, oh no, it's all real.
It was here. Let's touch. Let's touch. My soul's shadows. What? I don't know. Took him. Hurt. Hurt. Get up. Hutch is gone. What? Hutch is gone.
Very Wicker Man.
Yeah. I mean, because I kept thinking, I was like, okay, so these guys are probably going to die, but like, are these people crazy? And then the monster comes out. I mean, 7-year-old film. And you're like, oh no, okay. I appreciate that because like usually there's a cop out and it's like, was it well worth a watch? It is. You have to invest yourself into it. Like it's not, you have to pay attention, but it is like 90% character drama and atmosphere. Kind of like the Robert Redford film, All Is Lost, we talked about. It's very like deliberately paced. Yeah. But these woods like have a life of their own and it's very oppressive, the whole film. And so the payoff at the end is well worth it. But it is based off one of these crazy Scandinavian myths of like, you know, don't go outside. There's horrors beyond imagination. And I really enjoyed it. It was it got some pretty good reviews. A lot of modern audiences don't have patience, I don't think.
Okay.
It's not a second screen film. I think that's been the current thing is that like a lot of stuff is being
marketed
deliberately designed as
something to pay attention to. Yeah,
something that you have on your big screen while you look at your phone. And I mean, that's a larger discussion. Makes me very sad. This is not one of those things.
To the point where the last, I don't know, like 4 times I've been to a commercial theater, someone in the theater below me and the rows below me has their stupid phone open. Every single time. Because, it's just, I'm like, you know, at home is one thing. I'm guilty of that, sure. But this is the
You're
last.
Paying to be here.
This is the last.
Other people.
This is the last like hurrah of this medium in this context with people, and you're ruining it for me.
Yeah, it's on the decline. I don't know if it's dying because you know the death of the movie theater has been pronounced multiple times over the decades.
They'll exist regionally. I don't think they're going to be in every small
It's in
town.
a changing state. It is definitely in a decline right now. And I don't know. Some of it I think is TikTok and stuff like that. And just the access to phones. Like the attention spans have undoubtedly lessened. And then there is the 2-screen effect, which is I really try, and I'm guilty of it. And I try my hardest not to be. But my thing is you know, it's so easy. You're watching a film, even an older film. You're like, oh, where do I know that guy from? Oh, I'll put him on IMDb.
And that's how you get. That's exactly what I do.
And then you're in the trivia section, and you're dissociating from the film, and you're really deprived. You know,
especially if there's some kind of slow part of it. You know,
you're getting more information, but you're really detaching yourself from the art. Ultimately, I don't think it's a good thing.
I don't know if I told you guys the story or not, but I waited till Dune 2 had been out for a couple weeks. And then a buddy of mine was visiting from out of town, and we went and saw a midnight showing on a Wednesday. We go into the theater, it's empty, right? And then 5 minutes after the movie starts, this guy and his girlfriend come in and sit directly in front of us. And then he proceeds to get on his phone, and then every 4 or 5 minutes goes, "What did that guy just say to her?" So it was. I was not pleased. It was like we were on candy camera. It was like a bit.
Was the guy bigger than you? I would size the guy up to decide. If he was smaller than me, I'd be a brave man. But if he was
and I think the two of us, my buddy and I, might have been able, but I also didn't want to go to jail that night. So
any other night he'd have gone to jail.
I'm not saying attack him. I'm saying, hey, buddy. hey, you ain't the only guy in here.
The difference between you and me, Josh, is I've got a face that says "punch me." So there's
Adam, there is no difference between you and Josh at all.
You got the tattoo. What can I tell you, man? It's not...
if I confront somebody in a movie theater, there's a 100% chance I'm getting hit. So...
I've been hit in a movie theater. So.
Who hasn't, really? I mean,
I didn't get to see License to Drive that night. So in the end, I won. The Ritual. Not super old. I think probably on Netflix. Pretty good. And definitely like Jason talked about the myths from other countries and stuff, and kind of having I don't know. There's that when you're not familiar with it, it's done well. It can be a much more impactful. I don't know if somebody in Finland or something's watching is sees the symbol is that's a jet dude. I heard this thing. Another one of those stories.
Yeah, I think the Babadook, also the Australian mythological creature, I think that was very interesting to kind of to go into something that actually exists, but you not know it. You're unfamiliar with it. Unlike if you say, the Tooth Fairy or whatever, right. Something that everyone knows about. You're experiencing something unexpected, I guess.
Well, it's instructive in the fact that when you are familiar with something, it's like when you're watching a vampire movie, you're like, man, they should know to get some silver bullets, and it's like maybe they don't.
Maybe in that universe they don't have that knowledge, right?
Yeah. So when you're watching these films from another culture, you're like, hell, I don't know how to fight a Korean ghost. It can detach its head and has tentacles. Oh my God.
I'll call LG, see what they say.
One of the things I really like about the Walking Dead universe is that they never use the word zombie. And also, as they encounter other outside groups, all the groups have a different word for zombies that they have to like it's an insider's word, like the regional, pop or whatever. And so they have to, if they want to pretend to be from that area, they got to learn what the word is. I don't know.
That was weird, that whole culture that called them atoms.
Well, I was honored to be chosen. So.
All right, so I want to mention one last movie, and that is, believe it or not, an even more recent movie than a 7-year-old film.
Oh my God.
We're treading new ground here, people. And that's the 2021 The Green Knight.
Tell me a tale of yourself, so that I might know thee.
I have none to tell.
Yet. You have none to tell yet.
I fear I'm not meant for greatness.
We all fear, but fear can be a gift.
Do not waste this.
This is on my list to watch. I really wanted to go see this.
This was produced by A24. they do some very, very interesting things.
God bless them. They're carrying a very large torch in a lot of darkness right now. They really are keeping
genre films, especially. Yeah. It's very artistic. It's very deep thought. Definitely not something that you can, again, be on your phone at the same time that you're watching it. It's just a little over 2 hours. Now, the thing about it is when it was released, it made, I think, maybe just shy of $4 million over the budget. It is technically a success, but not one by Hollywood standards.
Right.
It's very good. It's very stylistic and done in the mood. If you don't know the tale of the Green Knight, it is an Arthurian legend. A knight in green armor and green skin, everything, shows up in the middle of a party at Camelot and makes a bet with everyone who's there, to strike him. And if they don't succeed at striking him down, then a year later they have to show up at his castle for him to return the blow. So it's this story, but they kind of weave more elements of. I have to say it has to be inspired by Borman's Excalibur, because it's definitely pitting a lot of the ideas of like the emergence of Christianity in Britain against the paganist past.
The Green Knight is a book on its own. I think I have it.
Yes, I think maybe Tolkien even wrote a version.
It's a very old. I mean, I think a ton of the Arthurian tales kind of came out of the 1100s, maybe.
Yeah.
11 and 1200s, and a lot by French authors.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it is similar to what Tolkien was doing, was that invented myth for Britain.
Yeah.
Kind of like whole cloth, and so there are all these interwoven stories, and some of them are really. And they all do have like a rich subtext to them. And a lot of it is, like you said, that has the emergence of Christianity, which is why Borman's film, I think, is really underrated, because it is the Arthurian version of Clash of the Titans. You watch that movie, and then you woke up and you had like Lamort the Author in your hands. You're like, how did this book even get here? Or the Once and Future King.
Once and Future King was that was my gateway. Was the
like you like turn over in your sleep, and it's like there, like the horse's head.
The ghost of T.H. White. Jesus.
But I've yet this again it's too fresh on the vine for me to have seen.
Yeah, me. Getting old's hard.
So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but like I said, you can see and how it is presented. It's actually directed by David Lowery, who's got some interesting things on his resume. Oddly enough, he's also the guy who wrote and directed the Peach Dragon remake.
Oh,
wow.
And Peter Pan and Wendy for Disney. So it's
wow.
He's on opposite sides with these.
I have seen the Pete Dragon remake. It's got
it can't be any worse than the original.
Do you say that?
I've seen
it. Does have Carl Urban in it, I believe. It was not good. And again, I don't think it was directorially. It's one of those films that's like it
directed
looks
by
fine.
committee.
It's competently done. It's just you're like, why does this exist?
It can only be as good as it is, and it's not good.
This is clearly an exploitation of IP.
But it's not like Bride of the Atom or anything. It's not like, holy God. It's like everything was done fine.
It's like pinto beans out of the grill. You're like, well, this is what it's supposed to taste like, but I don't like it.
It's like steakhouse versus like Ruth's Chris or something. It's like, I mean, it was steak, it was meat, it was edible. I'm not going to write a review on it or tell everybody, oh my God, I had the New York strip at Longhorn, and it was amazing. Poured some water on top of it and a nice sloppy steak.
Wear that Marlboro jacket down there. You're going to have a good time.
All right, versus like a Ruth's Chris steak, I'll be like, It was very expensive, but it was very good. I wouldn't take you guys there. I would take y'all to Longhorn.
You wouldn't take us to McDonald's.
Probably not.
Which these days is the same price as Longhorn. So you might as well just go.
He takes people he hates to McDonald's.
It makes
just
him
leaves
pay.
them.
I take them 100 miles from where I am and drop them off at a random McDonald's with no phone or money. That's my thing.
Hey, Adam, you want to go to McDonald's? Yeah, man. Hey, I'm going to run to the bathroom real quick. You go order for us.
That's my goat, man. That Josh, man, he takes people randomly to Clearwater, Florida, and drops you off at a McDonald's.
He tries to make it look like a kid exchange from a divorced couple. So, anyway, like I said, you see a lot of that in the imagery. The Green Knight in this one is literally like nature itself. Like he's a man of like wood and
he's like the Green Man, like the actual Green Man.
Yes, and so of course the tale is, he challenges the knights.
O greatest of kings, indulge me in this friendly Christmas game. Let whichever of your knights is boldest of blood and wildest of hearts step forth. Take up arms, and try with honor to land a blow against me. Whomsoever nicks me shall lay claim to this my arm. Its glory and riches shall be thine. But thy champ must bind himself to this. Should he land a blow, then 1 year and Yuletide hence he must seek me out yonder, to the Green Chapel, 6 nights to the north. He shall find me there and bend a knee and let me strike him in return, be it a scratch on the cheek or a cut in the throat. I will return what was given to me, and then in trust and friendship we shall part. Who then? Who is willing to engage with me?
Sir Gawain steps up, and there's also a lot of connection. Like he's not quite certain of his position as a knight. Like he doesn't have the great stories to tell, like Lancelot and all this. He doesn't have these great deeds to be proud of and all that kind of stuff. So he's kind of unsure of himself, and so he sees this opportunity to stand up, and Arthur gives him his sword to use. And as the original tale goes, he takes a swing and decapitates the Green Knight, but then the Green Knight picks up his head and sets it back on his shoulders. Hands Gawain his axe and tells him he has to meet him in a year's time to receive a similar blow himself. And so, like most of the Green Knight's tales, it's the tale of him making the journey to meet the Green Knight and like all the people and interactions he has along the way. They bring in a lot of the strife and everything. Like he comes across a battlefield just filled with dead, just through the warring and everything that's going on. And there's a very mystical element going. Like he's even like robbed at one point, but then he keeps reuniting and finding the axe, and he runs into a ghost and everything, and helps the woman there. It's just your typical quest type tales. And then he, at the end, meets the Green Knight in his, essentially a temple out in the middle of the woods. And when he gets there, the Green Knight is just sitting still. Gawain sits there until the night comes, and then the knight stands up. He's ready to take his blow, and Gawain becomes fearful and runs away. And then you see, like, the rest of his life. He returns, everybody thinks he's a great hero, and he eventually becomes king. But then the kingdom starts to fall apart underneath his leadership because he's not the man that the kingdom needs to lead it and all that kind of stuff. And then it stops and he's back in front of the Green Knight. So this was all just like this thought that goes through his head. And then he stands and he decides that he is ready to take the blow. And of course, in the original tale, the knight doesn't take the strike because it's all a test of character. In this one, it is left ambiguous at the end, but it's also implied that the knight's like, okay, let's do it. So it is just as possible as not that he is beheaded. The actual story is about a man's character and what he can live with. If it's, actually these great tales of what people consider to be honor and everything, or if it's actually living with honor and being true to your word and everything like that. So it's an interesting take. Like I said, it's about a little over 2 hours, but it's visually stunning.
That's good.
I'll do my late night talk show host. Wow. Wow. That's heavy stuff, man.
That's not your vibe. You're more the Art Bell. You're going to channel a late night radio host. That's where you should be.
I'm an old hippie, man.
Speaking of myths and legends, American myths and legends, there was nothing better than Art Bell at 2 a.m.
Driving home at work at 3 o'clock in the morning.
At the theater. I was working at the movie theater, coming home at 2 a.m. after the theater closed. And that man was the most empathetic and understanding human on the planet. He would believe any conspiracy theory anyone threw at him.
He knew he was getting paid, believe me.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, he was like, man, I'm really sorry your grandma was eaten by a capybara. Can you tell me more about it?
He wouldn't believe it, but he would egg that stuff on. Yeah, that was.
Tell me more about the chupacabra living in your drain. Well, every time I drain the sink, I hear it go. Whoa.
I bet that's terrifying for you.
And you're sure it's not the
No, see, he would never do that. He would never give an alternate explanation. That's what I love. There was like everyone in the car was going.
That was George Norrie that did that.
Yeah, that was George Norrie would argue with you, but
yeah. I almost, instead of doing this version of the Green Knight, I almost did the Sword of the Valiant from 84 with Sean Connery and Miles O'Keefe.
I haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah, because it's terrible.
Yeah, that was a TNT movie that used to come on too.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, since you've apparently seen it, Adam. How much O'Keefe is in this film?
Oh, jeez. Let's see. 8 lines? 10?
Oh man, throw dude a softball Mystique reference and he misses it.
Oh, sorry.
The answer to how much O'Keefe is in this movie is Miles O'Keefe.
Joel is disappointed, visibly.
All right, so are there any other films you guys want to even mention just in passing? Maybe not even go.
Well, we already talked. One that came immediately when you came up with this was, we've talked about adaptations of stories like this before. We recently talked about Oh Brother, Where Art Thou being the Odyssey.
The Odyssey, yeah.
That's obviously a great one that we've talked about in the past. But other than that, no, that was just the one for me.
So if you're listening at home, reach out to us any way you can and tell us what your favorite myth or myth movie is. If you would like to bust a myth that's not this show, we only believe the myths.
Keep going, man. You've already started. You should tell them how to get in contact with us.
I don't know. Linktree/BrickPit. It's all over the place. We're on X, Facebook, Gmail, brickpit@gmail.com. If you know where a podcast is or could be found, we are there. Podbean, Potistan, Harry Potter. We're everywhere. And if you're listening to this, you obviously know how to get the podcast because you're here. Unless you're in like your friend's car and you're like, please turn this off.
My child is sick in the back. For the love of God, turn it off.
Look, I know you're my Uber driver, but could you put something else on? The Cannibal Holocaust soundtrack would be better than this.
Why does it smell like chloroform back here?
That's what they all say. So we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Maybe one day your tweet will be read on this very program or in a court of law.
Until then, good listening. We hope to have you join us yet again for the next episode of The Brick Pit.